I'm going to be canning some diced tomatoes today, and I wanted to show you my process. So the first thing that I did was I blanched my tomatoes, and all I do is I bring a large pot of water to a boil on the stove, and then I drop my tomatoes in and I leave them in there for 30 seconds, and then I scoop them out and put them directly into a tub of ice water, and that helps to break the skins and they come off super easily. So I've already taken the skins off and I've cored my tomatoes. So the next step is I'm just going to take these and I'm going to start chopping them in little pieces. It doesn't matter really what kind of tomatoes you use. I'm using yellow tomatoes tonight and a variety of different red tomatoes, but mostly beefsteak. So use what you have on hand. Anything will work, and here we go. So I'm just going to start by just chopping them. Everyone has a different preference, but I like our diced tomatoes pretty finely chopped. So I just start by just making, slicing them lengthwise, and then I go back and slice them into like little cubes. So I'm just going to keep working through this whole bowl of tomatoes and get them nicely chopped, and then I just drop them into another bowl here. My tomatoes are all diced up, so the next step is I'm going to get them packed into my jars. I'm going to be canning mine in pints. So for a pint jar, you're going to use 1 tablespoon of lemon juice and a half a teaspoon of canning salt per jar. If you want to do quart jars, you would do 2 tablespoons of lemon juice and 1 teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to go ahead and get the lemon juice and the salt added to my jars. Now I'm just going to scoop my tomatoes into the jars. So I'm just using a little funnel to help me here, and then just a larger spoon. And I'm going to pack them with an inch headspace. My jars are all packed, and the next thing I want to do is I want to take a knife and just go run along the sides of the jar to release any air bubbles that might be in the jars. And then after that's done, I'm going to go ahead and wipe down the rims of my jars. You want those to be nice and clean so that your lids can seal. So I'll go ahead and wipe those down. Now that my jars are nice and clean, I'm going to go ahead and put my lids on. I'm going to be using the Tattler lids that are reusable, but if you are using the one-time use lids, this is the same step. So you just go ahead and place those on top, and then you tighten your bands on. I'm over here at the stove, and I have 3 inches of water in my canner. I've turned my heat on, and I'm loading up my jars into my canner. I can fit 8 on the bottom here. The thing I really like about these All-American canners is that this is the 32 quart, so normally in a smaller canner you'd only be able to can 8 at a time, but because this is so tall, I can take another insert and just lay it on the bottom here, or right on top of the jars, and stack some more jars in. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. Okay, to put the cover on, you just set it in place, and then you just turn it. You always want to make sure that the gap, there's a little gap here, that it's even around. So with the All-American canner, I always just turn my cranks opposite of each other, like this. And then I'm just going to double check that this is pretty even on all sides, and then I will go ahead and crank this down as tight as it can go. Now I'm going to turn my heat on as high as it can go as well. Okay, so then your canner always comes with a little weight, and on top of the weight it has little numbers, a 5, a 10, or a 15, and that is just for the elevation that where you live. So we here in Stevens Point need to use 15 pounds per pressure. So once I start to see steam coming out of this vent, I will start my timer for 7 minutes, and I'm going to let the steam release for 7 minutes. After the 7 minutes, I'm going to, there's a little hole here next to my 15. I'm going to go ahead and set that on top. So I will show you what that looks like once this gets up to pressure. It's pretty obvious to be able to tell, but I wanted you to be able to see it just in case you had questions. So it's probably hard to tell, but there's a bunch of steam coming out of this vent pipe. And if you go like this, you can hear it come out. So it's been going like this for 7 minutes. And so now I'm going to take my weight and I'm going to find the 15. That's where I need to can at. 15 pounds of pressure, and I'm going to go ahead and set that on. And as I do that, the gauge is going to start to increase pretty quickly. And as soon as the gauge gets up to 15, the weight should start to rattle. And that's when I start my timer. And I'm going to can these tomatoes for 25 minutes. Once it reaches 15 and this starts to jiggle. And the goal here is this should jiggle 1 to 4 times every minute. My canner has come up to pressure. You can hear that it's jiggling. My weight is jiggling, and you can kind of see it rattle. And you can also see my gauge reads 15. So now that those two things have happened, I'm going to go ahead and set my timer for 25 minutes. My timer went off, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off my stove. So here's a closer look. That gauge is already starting to cool down. It's a little bit under 15. Once it hits 0, then I can go ahead and pull off my weight. After the steam is all vented out, then I can go ahead and crank open my my lid. My canner is back down to 0, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the weight. And you can hear there's still some steam escaping, so I'm going to wait for that to be completely quiet, and then I will open up my canner. The canner has stopped making noise, so I'm going to use oven mitts because this canner is extremely hot. Even the little knobs here get pretty warm, so I'm going to go ahead opposite sides again, same way as I tightened it. I'm going to release it the same way. And then something to always remember, when you're taking a lid off of a canner, you always want to open it away from you so you don't get a steam burn. And now I'm just going to use my jar lifter, and I'm going to remove my jars from the water. And then because I'm using the Tattler reusable lids, I have one extra step, and that is just to crank down the tops of my jars. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. That's it. Just let these sit on your counter for at least 12 hours, and then you can take the bands off and check that they've sealed. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below.